Hello, my name's Lizzie Harper, and today what I thought we'd do is do a video showing how I take a commission from the initial steps right through to completion. So the equipment that I'm going to be using is my Winsor & Newton watercolour paint, which I top up from the tube when the paints wear out, and I also will be using my Winsor & Newton Series 7 brush, a number 1 size. The paper I'm going to be using is made by Global Arts, and it's Hot Press Fluid 100, and it's nice and smooth. It's really nice for working on. So the commission was to illustrate some orange tip butterflies along with their food plant, the food plant of the caterpillar, which is the cuckoo flower, Cardamine pratensis, not quite sure. So the first step is always to gather reference and then to come up with a composition. So I'll have a little talk about how we do that, and then I'll show you the drawn up pencil drawing, and then I can show you how I go about painting the subject. Hopefully you'll stick with me. I'll try not to make this video too long, but yeah, looking forward to it. So like I said, the first thing to do is to get your reference together. So we all have at our fingertips the internet, which has Google Images on, which is good. I also have past illustrations I've done. We have photography, and we also have illustrations done by heroes. So these ones are done by Richard Lewington, who is an amazing butterfly illustrator. He's an amazing all-round illustrator, actually. Anyway, so first I gathered my orange tip butterfly reference, so using my own illustration and some online images, and then I overlaid the veins, because I find it really difficult to paint butterflies without putting the veins there to give you kind of a skeleton to work into. I'm also lucky enough, not sure if you can see this. Can you see it? Yeah. I'm also lucky enough to have some old specimens like this one. So this is an orange tip butterfly, and I've got a couple of these. And can you see how beautiful they are on the back as well? So I've got these on just little bits of foam, and I've got 2 of these. It's always useful, if you can, when using ref, whether it's photos or specimens, get 2 to make sure that you're not perpetuating any errors or mistakes or glitches. Unfortunately, the commission came in just as the cuckoo flower went over, so it's not in flower anymore. It's a very early spring flower. These again are both, I don't know if you can see them very clearly, maybe. They're both illustrations of cuckoo flower that I've done over the years, and they show the basal rosettes, which the leaves are slightly different and broader, and then the leaves which come out here. And it's a 4-petal plant, which is a member of Leguminosae. So it's got these long seed pods. So I wanted to include some of that information. So then when you've done that, what you need to do is sort out your composition. Now this may look to you like a sheet of scratches done in pencil, and you are correct. But what it also is, if I talk you through it, so this is my illustration of what the plant's going to be doing. There's one butterfly in side view, and then, you know, would I put the other one there, or what am I going to do with the main butterfly facing us? Because I wanted the underside of the wings, which are that mottled effect, and I wanted it facing us with the orange tips. Definitely wanted the basal rosette of the flower in there as well. And then actually I had a rethink about that, because I thought it wouldn't fit. And then that's an even smaller, simpler version. Can you see? So that's one butterfly, the other butterfly. Do they go there? Don't they go there? And then here, figuring out again, maybe what happens if we have the butterfly, focusing, what happens if we have the butterfly with its folded wings on the lower flower, and this one up here, or if we move it around. So this is what I always do. People play with decomposition differently. I do loads of these little thumbnails until I feel that it's correct. Some people will lay actual plants and specimens on the page, which is another way of doing it. Other people will draw them up on tracing paper and move them around. Composition is an absolute beast to get right. So if it's something that you struggle with, don't panic. You are far from alone. But anyway, after playing around with this for a while, I sort of settled on this, you know, with one flower coming off and the butterfly in flight, and then the other one with her folded wings. and the flowering head. And I'm going to lift this up because it's very hard to see graphite on film, I know. So then using, for the flower I just drew it by hand obviously, but for the butterflies I used a projector. I have an amazing projector called a Design Master. So literally you put the illustration that you're going to use in, and you can change the nozzle and make it bigger or smaller. Absolute genius. They don't sell them anymore. When it breaks I'm going to be in some trouble, but there we go. So yeah, so this is the drawn up final thing. So I decided this one to be up higher and this one to be down lower. You can see we've got plenty of flowers going on there because it's got to be appealing. Make sure it's botanically accurate. Make sure all those leaves are there. And as you can see down the bottom, I was like, you know what, I'm not, because it's a tall plant, I'm not going to go all the way down and get the basal rosette in. So there we are. That's done in pencil. And the pencil I've been using is the one I always use, which I always bang on about. I love mechanical pencils, and this one is a Pentel 0.5mm P205. Oh, and while we're at it, let's just have a close-up of that paintbrush again. Again, Winsor & Newton. Whoops. It's a Winsor & Newton Series 7 sable brush. So number 1. I've been questing for a long time to find a synthetic to replace this, but I've kind of given up now. I'm going to stick to my guns. I love these brushes. I know it's not particularly vegetarian friendly and stuff, but they just work. So yeah, so this is the brush I favour. Right, so I'm going to start on this lower leaf, and I've mixed up a green, which is more or less right. As I say, I haven't got the plant in front of me because it's kind of gone over now. But luckily I know it really quite well, and I've got a lot of my own illustrations I can refer to. So that colour is a mix of loads of stuff. I mean, some people are quite careful with their colour mixing. I just keep on mixing until it's right. So it's a mixture of terre verte, and there's some cobalt blue in there. There's some cerulean. There's some of this, which I think is Winsor yellow. A little bit of Van Dyke brown. What else did I shove in there? Bit of sap green. Oh, and a bit of, that's either phthalo green or Winsor green. You know, it's one of those bluey greens. So I've mixed it up, and it's got sort of the consistency of cream is what I like to think. And I work quite, well, as you guys know, most of you, I work quite kind of heavily, I guess. Somebody on a course recently said that what I do is I draw with the paint, which I quite like. So rather than laying down washes, I kind of I'll sort of draw the shapes with the paint as I lay them down, rather than just building up the colour in thin layers. So what I'm doing now is they've got these roundish leaves. They've got these they've got the central vein, and they've got these sort of, they're not very obvious, but these side veins. So what I'm trying to do is just get the tonality more or less right. And so I'm doing that by building up the little strokes. You always follow the line of growth when you draw. Well, if you do follow the line of growth, you'll be in a better position, let's put it that way. Okay, so the edges are normally a little bit darker as well. Again, if you've got the plant in front of you, you are well away. You're in the catbird seat, which I think might be a phrase our family invented. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, but it's much, much easier to paint if you've got the plant right there in front of you. So that's one side of it done. Because if you don't, you have to rely on photos and sketches. So you can't rotate the plant and see how it works. How does this stem attach to the leaf, or, you know, what exact colour are the veins on the flowers? But it's also irritating because you haven't got it in front of you to double check to see where the lights and the darks are going. So over the years, I've got quite good at faking where the lights and the darks are, which is what I'm doing now. And it'll look kind of realistic, but it won't look like super realistic because the nuances of it are lost because I haven't got the plant in front of me. So yeah, always the best way to do your best work is to have a specimen in front of you and just to look and look and look. When you think you're done looking, don't stop, but start looking again. Right, so I would imagine, so on this side, I need a little bit of definition down here, but I don't want it to go too dark because most of the dark's on that side, right? And do that. And block that one in there. So there is a difference in tonality. The far side of the leaf is being painted paler than the near side, which hopefully gives a visual trick to suggest that the leaf is kind of curled up a little bit. And since that's a pattern that I've done here, oh, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have done that one first, should I? I'm going to zoom in a little bit if I can. There we go. Since that's one I've done there, I'm going to repeat that pattern. In fact, let's not be so stupid and let's go all the way down here for this one. Again, the outside edge first. And drawing in the shape of that leaf. And those veins with lots of little lines just kind of building up. So we've anchored it there. There we go. Don't know if you guys can hear the sparrows in the garden. They're really going for it today. The only time they ever shut up is we have a very rare visitor. It doesn't come very often. Sparrowhawk. And I can always tell when the sparrowhawk's in the garden doing its hunting, because the sparrows actually are silent. The rest of the time they just spend their whole lives bickering. I don't know why I'm complaining. I absolutely love it. Right. Okay. Oh, I messed that up, didn't I? Concentrate, Lizzie. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So, there we go. And there we are. So, a little bit more this side, but keeping this side lighter than the other side. With all watercolour painting. Somebody asked me recently in a comment on YouTube, is watercolour paint? And the answer is yes, it is, but it's quite kind of thin. It's much more liquid, and I guess possibly much more mobile than some other paints you might be thinking of, like oil and acrylic. But I think most of the people watching know that. What was I going to say? Oh, I don't know. Probably wasn't very important. So yeah, just literally delineating the edge of these little leaves. And I love this. So this plant, the cuckoo flower, it's got so many names. It's really quite common, and amazingly and wonderfully, it's one of the plants that actually it's not even on anybody's register of being endangered or anything. You can see it. It's really common. It's really pretty, and no matter what we do, seems to be hanging on in there and surviving. It's for such a delicate plant, it's clearly tough as old boots. And that's also very good for this the orange tip, because it's the orange tip's main food plant. So it flowers very early. Cuckoo flower. People say it's called cuckoo flower because it flowers around the same time that the cuckoos arrive on their migration from North Africa. I'm not convinced by that particularly, although I suppose there is a tie in there. It's quite likely. There was somebody I was talking to recently who knows a great deal not only about plants but also about plant lore, and he was being really funny. So one of the other names of this plant is Ladies-smock, and a smock, of course, is a sort of loose dress that I think in the olden days they might have worn over their clothes to try and keep them clean when they're out farming or whatever. So it was a very common thing, a smock. And I suppose Ladies-smock because it's sort of pale pink and so on. So cuckoo flower, Ladies-smock, milkmaids, again I suppose because of the fact that it appears in sort of wet lowland meadows. But this person I was talking to said the whole thing with Ladies-smock was in fact invented by the Victorians, and the earlier name for it, which really annoyed me, I didn't write down, I can't remember, was something which really in sort of colloquial English meant something terribly rude. And it was all to do with the fact that these flowers come out in early spring at about the first time where the grass, this is very rude, so do cover your ears. I don't want to upset people who have tender sensibilities, but around the time, they sort of come into flower sort of late March, I guess, around the time that for the first time in the year the grass was long enough to conceal amorous activities. Is that going to be a nice way of putting it? So that's why it had this sort of ladies-smock or whatever, ladies whatever. I don't think it used to be called ladies-smock. It used to be called something much ruder. And of course the Victorians can't bear that. The Victorians hated anything that suggested that there was any physicality or, you know, or sex. Not into that. So they made it a much cleaner name. But I quite like it. I quite like the fact that all the local people are like, oh yeah, Cuckoo Flower's out. That means people are going to be all over the field, you know, off doing their liaising. In the old days, in fact, as the Victorians, they were funny people. They cleared all sorts of names up. So there's, I don't know if you guys know the plant Arum maculatum. Over here it goes by Lords and Ladies or Jack in the Pulpit, and again it's got a central kind of sort of structure which comes out enfolded in pale green sort of sheath like leaf, and it does. I mean, if you know, whatever, it looks slightly rude, I can see that. It's got all sorts of rude names in the Old English, like you know, Pentel and Jack Pentel, which all means exactly what you think it might mean. But no, not for the Victorians. They cleaned it up. Lords and Ladies, Jack in the Pulpit. It's all very puritanical. Okay, right. So anyway, so Ladies-smock, yeah, it originally was called Ladies-smock probably because it was the beginning of the courting season. Let's put it that way. It's very pretty, so it's got these pretty little pale pink flowers, which I'll paint with you in a little bit. And it's also, these leaves, they might, to you, maybe, look slightly familiar, like kind of mustard or watercress, something like that. And they're in the same family, so they're kind of they are in the mustard family, this plant. And it is edible as well, so in fact, as long as you don't pick much of it, because of course you wouldn't want to damage any of the local populations. But if you take a little leaf and eat it, it tastes really mustardy. I've certainly had it. I've added it to salads and things like that. It's really nice. Yeah, and the Latin name also tells you where you're going to find it growing. So Cardamine and then pratensis. Pratensis means meadow in Latin. Latin names are cool like that. They'll always tell you something about the plant. Often things that you wouldn't necessarily know, actually. I can't think of any examples of that right now, but there you are. Okay, so trying to concentrate on what we're doing instead of concentrating on what I'm saying. So there's a lot of, near me in Hay-on-Wye, there's a lot of Ladies-smock that grows down in this little area of kind of meadow, I guess. It's kind of floodplain, although it's been tampered with over the years massively, so it's been improved and it's had grazing on it and all sorts. They're trying, the committee who run it are sort of trying to bring it back to a point where it's more of a floodplain with more of the old rare species in. But then saying that, they cut it for hay a week and a half ago before any of the plants had time to set seed, so I don't know what's going on. Years before, they've been more careful about that. Anyway, but in that meadow, there's a whole cluster of these beauties down by a bank, and there's so many of them, and they do so well that they make that whole area of the field look pale pink, and they kind of nod slightly in the wind. It's really, really beautiful. So yeah, I like my Ladies-smock. Cuckoo Flower. Maids are milking, that's another name for it. And then when the plant turned up in Ireland, I think it might have been introduced to Ireland, but I'm not sure about that. Because of the association with maids, again, it became, because of the Catholic thing, Mary's, I think Mary's smock and things like that to do with Virgin Mary. So that's quite cool as well. Okay. Excuse me. So here in my studio today, it's July, just literally. Oh, it's bad. I got hair on the end of my paintbrush. Ugh. You would imagine July in the Welsh borders, wall-to-wall sunshine, nothing but happy flowers in the fields, and you know, everything looking gorgeous and summery. But it's not. It's not actually raining right now, but it's just, there was a downfall a few minutes ago. Absolute downpour. It's very wet and it's rather cold, and I'm actually, truth be told, wearing 2 cardigans. So yeah, welcome to the Welsh summertime. Wouldn't have it any other way though. It's a beautiful part of the world, and if it didn't rain like it does, then everything would be all dry and crispy, and that would be sad. So I'm not going to complain. But I am meant to be meeting a friend tomorrow and having a barbecue at hers, so let's hope it changes its mind by tomorrow morning. Okay, so this is concentrating on the outside edge, because our eyes like to be held. They like outside edges. It's I guess a visually safe space almost. It's like if you know what's going on, you know that the outside edge is there, that's fine. When I was teaching just the other day down at Cambridge, we were talking about this. We talked about tricking the eyes, and how if you really, you know, if you want to have a crisis, all you really need to do is remember that when you're painting, actually you're not actually, reproducing the image of this plant, whatever, but actually all you're doing is you're layering pigment onto a piece of paper. So it's all to do with convincing the eye of what it's seeing. Right, now we've gone round the corner, haven't we? Which is always fun, round the corner. So we have to flip it, so the darker sides now are going to be up here on the top sides. So, and I've set up my camera today. I did a marvellous film for you guys last week or 2 weeks ago. And I was stippling an apple, and it was actually, do you know what, you probably dodged a bullet there, but it was about 45 minutes of me stippling an apple and talking about pen and ink techniques and all that stuff. Yeah, in fact, in retrospect, it could have been incredibly boring, but I did all the filming, and then when I came to watch the film, I'd set the camera up, and I'd been a good girl. I'd done everything I meant to with this new hang on. I've got this new system that holds the phone while I film and things. But I'd somehow, in a cunning way, managed to insert my head between the camera and the illustration. So it was a lovely 45-minute piece of film of my greying hair, with a lovely bit of narration about all the things that I was drawing and all the techniques I was using that nobody would be able to see. So that went straight in the bin. But I think I've sorted that one out. I think I'd have to be a very strange shape to manage to insert my head under the camera today. Okay, so I might have taken this too dark. You know what I was saying about if you're using watercolours, then your white page is your light. So the threat is always that you're going to go too dark, and then it just looks heavy and clunky. And I think that side of that leaf will have suffered from that. What's quite nice about the cuckoo flower is the leaves are quite variable in shape. They're not all identical. So you don't want just like cookie cutter leaves. You want to add a bit of variety to them. Making sure that you stick to the botanical, the botanical truth of where the veins are and things. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause this bit of film, because you can see what I'm doing. I'm just literally working around. I'm going to put in this. This is still the same initial mix I was talking about, the green. So I'm going to continue filling in the last few on this bottom leaflet thing. And in fact, I may well also do these top ones, although these leaves are a little bit yellower, so I'd add a bit of yellow to the mix. And then I think I'll rejoin you once that's all done, and show you the next step of working into the leaves. So I've plotted in, I think you can see all of the leaves I'll zoom in a little bit. Just put in all of that initial green layer. This is normally the layer with painting leaves that takes the longest, because you're putting the structure in and you think about the veins and you think about the tonality and the light and all those shenanigans. And then what I've done is I've mixed up another green, which you can see just here. So you can see it's much more watery than the other one. It's a bit yellower, and I've made a tint, which means I've diluted it with a bit of water. And so then what I'm going to do is just go over the bits that I've done and also incorporate a little bit more of those areas of white, right? So can you see I'm not sort of being as detailed or as careful this time. I don't want there to be too many stark contrasts. The space where those lateral veins are coming along, I'm leaving those white for now. Painting over the bits that I've painted. Again, making sure that those leaf edges, that's a bit too stark, that one there, never mind. So I want the leaf edges to be where the paint is anchored, because that's where the eye will want the paint to be anchored. Our eyes like a good edge, even though edges don't actually exist. I had an amazing art teacher many years ago, nothing to do with natural history illustration or botanical illustration, but she basically taught us all how to draw. We had life drawing at this college I went to every Monday, all day long, and she's called Diane. I can't remember her surname, which is bad actually. And she used to explain that there was no such thing as an edge, because the object continued. You know, it continued in space. If you saw something like the edge of somebody's leg and you drew it as a straight line, it's fine. That's fine. That's how you're interpreting it. But there isn't actually a straight line there. That leg continues to go round into and anchor itself in space. And I find it's a lesson that sort of stuck with me. So every time we see an edge, what we're seeing is actually something artificial. Unless it's like the edge of a ruler or something. Oops. It's to do with curves, really, I think. Anyway, I found it very interesting. Okay, so you can see here, just going over the bits that I've done, leaving a little bit of white, if I can, if it's not too much hassle. And you're just layering the colour, you know, as you do traditionally with watercolour. There we go. And I'm going to do a line here against the midrib. And the nice thing about working on, it's a bit rubbish. The nice thing about working on a larger piece is you can move onto different elements, different parts of the same illustration as the leaves dry, because it's really important when you're doing watercolour, when you're working into those different areas, it's really important that you wait for each layer to dry completely so that you don't have any unexpected kind of bleeding. So if you're putting another layer on, you probably want the paper to be dry even if it's got pigment on it. It's worth thinking about. And in fact, when I do demos and things in class, in the classroom setting, that's what I always mess up on, because I'm so keen to show what I'm doing that I'm like, you know, I rush at it, and I'll put the next layer on before the first one has dried, and it normally doesn't create quite the effect that I've wanted. It doesn't look as convincing, which is why this format, where I can leave you guys and then come back once paint has dried, is a bit better. Midribs, really important to have these veins and these lateral veins in, because they give structure, and without that you'd it wouldn't really make much sense. So they're what the veins are, what sort of make the leaves look like leaves. Okay, make sure that I'm still under. I've realised I'm wearing a new pair of earrings I was given quite recently by some friends, and I've realised they're very noisy, or maybe it's just because they're right next to my ears. So if you hear a peculiar jangling as I paint. That's it's my posh new earring. Okay, so there we go. There we are. I was looking into the before doing this film, looking into the folklore of cuckoo flower, because inevitably, something that I love, inevitably if a plant is common, there's an awful lot that has grown up around it that people believe and or used to do, or whether that's homeopathy or herbal medicine or just kind of folklore and traditions. So this one, Ladies-smock, for some reason is regarded as being sacred to the fairies, and it's interesting, if you look into folklore, fairies aren't these cute little things that come to 6-year-olds' birthday parties and kind of decorate cupcakes. They're really quite nasty, actually. They're quite frightening. Sort of traditional fairy is not a powerless, cute, pretty thing in chiffon at all. So you really didn't want to get the wrong side of the fairies, because they were nasty. They were quite scary. So anyway, so supposedly cuckoo flower was sacred to the fairies, so you weren't allowed to pick it, and that extended to May Day garlands. So a big tradition is May Day, which I suppose is all ties in with pagan traditions of spring and harvest and renewal of the seasons and all that stuff. We have the maypole. Oh, yeah, exactly. I'll leave that there, shall I? Which to do with, it's all to do with fertility and all that kind of stuff. But also part of the May Day celebrations always you'd make big garlands of the wild flowers, and I think you'd decorate your homes with them. But did you decorate churches as well? I think maybe you did. But the cuckoo flower, even though it would have been prolific at the time, sort of early 1st of May, prolific when the garlands were being made, you really were not meant to put any cuckoo flowers in the garland. It's just not a very good idea. Whether or not that was due to the fairies or just bad luck, I'm not sure. And in some places, I know in Oxfordshire and Somerset, there's records of people saying that if you picked the cuckoo flower, then it would bring a thunderstorm, which, I mean, I love a good thunderstorm, so I'd be up for that, but I think it was meant to stop you from picking them. And there's also a record of places where they said if you pick the cuckoo flower, you're going to get bitten by a poisonous snake, which you'd be lucky really, because the only poisonous snakes we have in Britain are the adder, and I think it is very horrible being bitten by an adder, but I don't think I'm about to say something wrong, like I don't think anyone's died from an adder bite, but it's certainly not an incredibly venomous beast. So yeah, but I don't know why. Normally, if you've got kind of warning saying don't pick this flower for whatever reason, it's because it's terribly important, or it's gives a lot to the community or whatever. I'm not sure with cuckoo flower why that would be, but yeah, so you weren't meant to pick it. But then if you weren't meant to pick it, how would they have figured out that you could eat it, right? Because you can't find out that it tastes like mustard if you're not allowed to pick it. Oh, it's confusing. So cuckoo flower grows commonly in sort of moist meadows all over Britain. It's very common. And on waste ground it does okay as well. And I was reading that it's native to North Asia as well, but it's been introduced as a kind of garden flower in America, North America, and it's an escape, a garden escape, and it's now naturalized, so you'll find it nowadays growing wild in North America as well. I'm assuming probably closer to kind of suburban built up areas where there's a lot of people who've been tending their gardens, but I'm not sure. Yeah, and in terms of the herbalism, it's meant to, now what's it meant to do? If you've got arthritis, you're meant to make a tea of this, and that's meant to help. Or it's also meant to be good for your liver and for your kidneys. But my favourite idea is that it is very good to inhibit spasmodic. So, you know what spasms are, when your nerves all go into spasm. But there's one specific thing that used to, I suppose it probably still does happen, called St. Vitus's dance, which I knew a tiny bit about this as a child, and I was absolutely intrigued and thrilled by it in the way that, you know, when you're a kid, you're just a bit like, oh, that sounds so awful, but so thrilling, I want to see. So St. Vitus's dance, I've since found out, it's a neurological condition. It sounds really unpleasant, actually, which can follow a streptococcal infection. And it's basically you sort of go into uncontrollable spasms. I don't know what the prognosis is. I don't know if it ends up killing you or anything like that. I'm going to hope not. But I think it's quite dramatic if you see somebody who has St. Vitus's dance, because it looks like they're flinging themselves all over the place without knowing what they're doing. Yeah, which is why I was so excited by it as a child. And then, what was I going to say? Yeah, so supposedly, Cuckoo Flower would be a good counteraction to that, you know, before you could kind of get pills from your local doctor that might deal with it. You could have some Cuckoo Flower and that would help. I think I'd prefer the pills from the doctor. Okay. So I'm leaving these whites in the middle because that's where the light is hitting. Oh, I nearly messed up. You can't see it, but just off camera, I just put my hand in one of those big leaves that we were just doing. And it's okay. But yeah, I only just got away with that. And can you see just then I rotated the page, which I do all the time as I'm painting. Actually, when you're filming, it's one of the trickier things to do. So you've got to be really careful doing that, or you are no longer filming what you're working on. That's one reason why I also work quite dry. So although I do stretch paper, you can see with this one, you know, it's not stretched, it's just the edge of the page, right? And I don't need to, partly because I work dry, but also I don't like having things on boards that much because it makes rotating them so that you can get to the right angle much harder. I'll leave that bit of white just there, I think. These bits like here where they're still kind of white, they're the underside of the leaves. And I'm probably going to have to go online and have a little look to see what's happening with the underside of the Cuckoo Flower leaf, because I'm not sure. In many cases, the bottom of leaves is kind of pale, slightly milky sometimes, but significantly paler than the top. But that's absolutely not true in every case, and I don't know. And I haven't got in my notes about Cuckoo Flower, I haven't got any notes that explain what's going on. This side, can you see this is underneath something else, so I'm just making sure that that's a solid colour because it needs to be solid, and again here to throw the things in front of it into relief. These are all little decisions you make all the time as you're painting. It's like, how dark do I take it? Am I going to leave that really light? In this one here, I'm thinking that middle bit here, I quite want that to be quite light, because then it will be a dramatic difference from the leaf underneath. Leaf underneath, I need to leave a little bit of pale on, and this one at the bottom, I am not having any pale on because he's underneath the rest of them, and that's important. See, look, rotating again. And if I analyse the rotation, it's so that I can do strokes that kind of follow the line of growth easily. So I always, when I paint, I'll always you follow the line of growth. It just makes the paint work better, and it looks better, and it looks a bit more realistic. If I was to start painting across like that, or just, you know, horizontally, it just wouldn't work as well, wouldn't feel as natural. So it's kind of, I guess it's to do with having respect for the organic form. There we go. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing this with these. I'm going to zoom out for a sec, if that's okay. So I'm going to keep keep going with these till I've got the second layer down. And the other thing I'm going to do at this point as well, because it's going to be with a similar colour to this one that I'm working with, is if you see the sepals, so these bits, so here's your flower, your cuckoo flower, and these bits here, they're the calyx, they're the bits that hold the petal, and they make the protective cover of the bud before they come out. But I'm going to start plotting those in, and I might also plot in the seed pods, the siliques. Yeah, but anyway, so I'll come back to you when I've finished doing those leaves and when I've plotted in some of the other greens. So I've done those top washes on all of the leaves. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can have a see. And can you see? So it's literally, that's now 2 layers of watercolour instead of 1. And I also I put in the outline of the stem, which is very similar to the other green, but with a bit more water and a bit more yellow. And I've started plotting in the seed pods and the calyxes, so that's all done. I've also, let's have a look, mixed up some colour for the back of the leaves, the underside that I was talking about, which is this one here. So this was some of this second green that we're talking about, the one that went on top of all the leaves, and I mixed it in with a tiny touch of this, which is white gouache. Now, I always used to be very much a purist, and so you must never use white in watercolour, but some colours you do need white to get them right. And you can use white watercolour, but I much prefer white gouache, don't know why. So the underside of my leaves will often have a little bit of that in. And then we're going to have to knock that back in the same way we have the other things. Zoom out a little bit. Okay, so rinse that brush, and then top layer on the leaves. So these leaves have gone a little bit too yellow, actually. So for my top layer, I'm going to mix up, I'm going to take some sap green. I'm mixing up on what I've already got. This one, in fact, this green I'm mixing into is the one which I used for the stem. So that obviously is way too yellow. So I'm going to add some cerulean. Not least because I actually know it's cerulean. Wow, that's rather too much cerulean. That is not what I want. Actually, touch of cobalt blue. Oh, a bit more. And that is obviously way too blue. So I'd like to knock it back a little bit with a bit of brown. I think this is Van Dyke brown, but I'm never sure. I'm not brilliant at keeping track of which paint names go in which pot. I just use my paints and just make sure I get as close as I can to the right shade. Okay, so this is way too dark right now, but it's nice and blue. So I'm going to be adding some yellow to knock it back a little bit. Bring it closer to the colour we want. Okay, that's closer. That's closer. It's now a bit too yellow. So I'm going to add quite a strong blue. So I think this is a Windsor blue, something like that. It's pretty, isn't it? Isn't that a lovely colour? Oh. Anyway, touch of that. And another touch of the cerulean, but remembering that it's gone quite weird. And okay. A bit more. It's a bit milky, isn't it? That's because of the, I think that's because of the yellow, which isn't an entirely transparent colour. Anyway, it's fine, it'll do. So now I'm adding water to it to make it a tint. Can you see how liquid that is compared to the other paint we've been using? Literally, I'm just adding drops of water. I'm turning the paintbrush, and you do that to get a tip to the paintbrush as much as possible. So, terrible moment of truth. Just put this over the whole lot, not the mid veins. Is it too dark? It might be too dark. Or are we going to get away with it? We're going to just about get away with it. Okay, yeah, no, that's going to be okay. If I keep the touch light. And if I anchor it up at the tip of the leaf. I'm going to dilute it a little bit more. So can you see, this top layer is quite transparent. So even though it adds body colour to the leaf, it also allows all that detailing that we've already done to shine through so you don't lose all the work you've done on the leaves. And don't get too occupied with the mid-ribs and leaving them or not leaving them. I mean, I tend to, because they tend to be a bit obvious, but you can get a bit wrong. We still are on camera. So what I like with this layer, this third layer, I guess it is, isn't it? Which is very liquid, is I very much like having it very, very wet, so that when it dries, it does that glorious thing that watercolour does of leaving a really crisp edge, which is something that's very, very attractive. And in fact, one of the things that I get very jealous of people who do really big watercolours with very wet paint. They're amazingly adept at using those edges and creating those edges, and they're visually very, very satisfying. Okay, so and can you see this is smoothing it as well, so it doesn't look quite so stark. I mean, at various points when I'm painting, the leaves look stupid, and they're like all kind of cut about and stuff. Whereas when you have these top washes, they knock them back, and they're just a little bit more unified and less choppy. There we go. And you'll be pleased to know, having complained bitterly about the weather earlier, you'll be pleased to know that now the sun is out and it looks like a proper summer day for once. Actually, I shouldn't be, really. It's gorgeous. So you can see the blue sky, but there's all those blue fluffy clouds, and the grass is looking gorgeous and green. All the plants are looking grateful because they've had their rain shower. I know I complain about the British climate. I really shouldn't. It's stunning. Very lucky to live here. Okay. Yeah, as long as you never come to Wales to catch the sun or to get a suntan, you'd be very happy. Right. Again, this is this thing of following the line of growth. So I wouldn't be going, well, you always have to follow the line of the paintbrush. So can you see how, I'm even going to show you about this because I think I've talked about this loads. So following the line of the paintbrush, you can go like that, and it's following the line of the paintbrush. But if you push against the line of the paintbrush, you go in the opposite direction. Can you see all the hairs come off, and it's just all, ugh, it's grim. And following the line of growth, that'd be if the leaf veins were going like that, you go like that, but you wouldn't be going like, you wouldn't be sort of chopping about. But yeah, always follow the nib of the brush kind of thing. Okay, where were we? So yeah, just plotting in this. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Look, spilled water all over my painting. She's so unprofessional. Oh my gosh. Right, so here we go. Pop those on there. There we are. If I zoom in, it might be a bit clearer what's going on. The thing is with zooming, it always looks a bit, when it's zoomed in, it always goes a bit sort of dark and pixelated, even though I've got the camera on an okay setting. So I quite like doing it from a distance. But I suppose if you're wanting to see exactly what I'm doing. Oh, and can you see here, I didn't even realise I'd done it, but I'm not I'm no longer leaving the mid-ribs. I just can't be doing with that in these ones. They're too fiddly, and in fact it's fine that they get swallowed up. I might try and leave a suggestion of one on this top leaf here, but I'm going to let it be really quite thin and quite moderate. Plop that one in. That's under, so I don't mind if that one goes dark. And now I find all these bits where I haven't put the underside of the leaf in properly. Apologies, that was the window cleaner. So comes round, squirts water all over the windows, which means I have to rush inside and shut all the windows. Okay, so again, we're just keeping going with this. Look, I've gone over the lines there. I'm meant to be good at colouring in, and that's no good at all, is it? That's rubbish. I'll show you how to fix that in just a second. So I'll do that one. Plot this in behind. So I'm making these ones quite dark because, again, they're behind something else, so we don't really want to make them sort of a focus particularly. Oh, we've done that one. I don't think we've done that one. Maybe we haven't done this one. I think maybe we did. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're in trouble. Someone come along and you okay. Again, just more of this top wash. I'm going to add a little bit of water again because it dried out a bit while I was in the house. And I like it doing that wet edge thing, anchoring it up at the top. There we go. Oh no, I'm off screen now, apologies. I'm going to release that. Oh, did you see what I did? Oh, I'm such an idiot. Went over the edges. I'm going to leave this central vein if I can. And the reason I'm not worried about the fact that I just went over the edges is because it's very easy to fix. I'm just going to widen. Just going to widen the base of that leaf, and it'll cover up any mistakes I've made. Got the scope to do that. And also, I mean, you can tell by how enormous my hand is, you know, the scale we're working at. I did go over the lines, but it wasn't very much over the lines, so it wouldn't really show up too much. That one I want to go darker. Woo! And this one here, I'm going to leave some of that white there so that there we go, it is out and obvious. And then this folded over one here, foldy roll. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to zoom out because I don't know where I'm going to go next with this. Oh, you know, I was talking about the edges. Can you see there? I mean, I haven't really done it, but just the edges where it's settled, where it's dried, it's quite crisp. It's a really pretty effect. Now, let's have a look at some of the places where I've messed up. There are quite a few. It's not just the one where you saw me messing up. I did another mess up somewhere. I can't see it. Okay, well, let's look at the one where I did it while you were watching. This one here. So all I'm going to do is fix it again. This isn't a light paint. This is a darker paint. And I'm just going to come in and change the edge of that leaf. Okay, and you would never know. Okay, I'm zooming out again. So we've done that. And now, can you see with the stem? So I've plotted in darker on the right-hand side, paler on the left-hand side. That was quite a kind of yellowy green that I used. And I'm now mixing up a little bit more of it. Very pale tint again. Lots of water in this one. Where are we? Here, I can show you. So really watery, bit yellower. Okay, look, it's really wet. Okay, and then I'm just gonna, well, you'll see. You'll see. So literally, we're doing, it's the same technique as on the leaves. It's even easier on the stems. You're literally just, it's just colouring in. That's it. So much of botanical illustration is just posh colouring in. Okay, no, that's all right. That's all doing what it's meant to do. Okay. I like it wet. I like keeping that paint wet, but at the same time controlled. Oh, you can see how I'm painting on top of pencil line. At least I hope you can. I haven't erased the pencils at all, and in fact this paper, this Fluid 100, along with various other papers, is it's really good for that. You can draw on top of it, you can paint on top of your graphite drawing lines, and then you can rub them out afterwards. Now, I'm not doing the calyxes because they're a different colour. They're a darker green. Oh, that was stupid. See, it's a balance between keeping the paint liquid and keeping it controlled. Okay. Actually, you know, I was just saying I'm not going to do the calyxes this colour. Well, I'm not, but I am going to give them an under. It's very important when you actually do a curve like that. I find it very difficult not to hold my breath. You have to stop breathing for a second. I'm actually, with the calyxes, I'm going to put this same colour as an under layer, because if I don't do that, then there's every chance that the difference between the stems here and the calyxes here would look too stark, and that would look really unnatural, like they couldn't necessarily grow from the other. So I can always make the calyxes a little bit darker. And the reason why I'm only painting one side is because I can come back with a different colour and do both sides as a top wash, which will give it some tonality. So as you can see, when you have the paint wet, you need to concentrate a little bit more, and I'm not being very good at concentrating today, I'm afraid. Keep getting distracted. Cat, the window cleaner, the husband, cups of tea, getting public liability insurance. Oh dear, it's a busy old life, I tell you. And I'm trying to learn Arabic, and I haven't done my Arabic online lessons today. Oh, getting beside myself, behind myself. Right, okay. Shut up, focus, Harper. Okay, so we're just doing this. We're going to let it dry. I think you can still see what I'm doing, can't you? Yeah, more or less. And I think, even though they are a much bluer green, I think I'm probably going to use the same colour for the top layer of the pods. Oh, that was annoying. Can you see it blended in there? I'll show you. So I quite wanted, where did it go? Where am I? I don't know where I am at all. It's up there. So these bits have blended into the stem, which is tiresome. I'll have to sort that out later. But I'm going to put this as a top layer on the seed pods as well. Again, it's to do with that unification. You want difference in the colours to reflect nature, but you don't want such a difference. Am I off screen again? You don't want such a difference that there's a real a sort of jarring disconnect between the colours. Okay, so where's our seed pods? There. And can you see, these are so easy, man. Literally, you just outline them and then fix that. Just do this with the top layer. Whoosh. One side, whoosh. The other, leaving that nice white line in the middle, anchoring it at the bottom and the top. And the other one, same again. Nice top wash. There we go. And using the same colour, actually, I'm going to use the same colour, even paler, and put that on my underside of my leaves, but not on the central, if I can help it, not on the central rib, because I want that to stay more or less white. Yeah, that's not ideal. Messed that one up, didn't I, ladies and gentlemen? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. So this is all going to look a little bit better when I pull out my darkest darks. Look, I messed up again. Look at me, I'm not unstoppable. Every second brush stroke is a complete mess. Gone over the edge there, so I wonder if I can fix that before it dries with a little bit of tissue. push down. There we go. As if by magic, right? Okay. Yeah, making sure we have that white vein left on the undersides. Down there. I got distracted. I was doing the stem, wasn't I? Come on, focus, 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 hocus, focus, focus. Okay. And then again, once this is done, really need to let it dry before going over. We're going to have one more run on one more pass of watercolour wash on the leaves, and then I'll get into picking up the darks. Okay, so I've mixed up that wet, which is kind of greens, water, yellow ochre, and this one with a bit more water. Actually, I don't want it to add too much colour. Is going to go over all the leaves, including those little white veins that we've been so careful about to keep clear. So it's going to take it a little bit yellower than it currently is, but I made the leaves blue, so that's not a problem. And you can take this colour down the stem as well, that's fine. Again, it all just blends in. You don't want to scrub about too much on the leaves. You do want this just to sort of sit and dry. Because if you move it too much, you're going to lose some of the detailing that you've gone to the trouble of putting in. Don't want that. Is that a thrush? I think there's a thrush in the garden. They always come out after it's rained. You can always tell it's a thrush. I'm so bad at birdsong. I wish I was good at birdsong. You can always tell a thrush because it repeats. A British song thrush, this is. Because they repeat their song 3 times. So they go diddly, 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 dee-doo-doo-doo, 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 etc., etc. Right. And again, we're doing the back of the leaves with this same really, really light top wash. I'm just going to do this stem here of leaves, and then I'm going to, there we go, and then I'm going to do the rest of it. I'm aware that this film, if I'm not careful, is going to be about 17 years long, and nobody has 17 years to sit and watch me witter on and paint. So yeah, I need to be aware of that. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm going to do over all the bits that I've painted thus far, okay? So bear with me. All of that's done now. Top washes are on and it's dried. And I'm printing something out, which is totally irrelevant. And I've mixed up this colour here to pick out my darkest darks with. So this is it's kind of like a purplish blue. It's a mixture of a purple and a burnt umber brown, and this, which is a kind of, it's an indigo blue. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, so that's the mix. And now this is hopefully, this is always the bit where hopefully putting these details in brings the whole thing to life. So what I tend to do is I'll, oh gosh, hopefully go in a slightly less heavy touch than that. I tend to put the details in where the shadows would fall, so you can see here that that stem would be casting a shadow onto that leaf, and this one would be casting a shadow onto that leaf. Got to think about the logic here to a certain extent. Okay, and the tips of the leaves quite often benefit from a little bit of attention. I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys. So you really don't want to overdo it. You don't want it to go too dark, but at the same time you need to put enough in there so that the areas that are really dark don't look incredibly stark, which they do just there actually. Just got to be really careful. Take your time. just pick out those darkest darks. With care and consideration. I haven't finished the calyxes, by the way. I've still got to do something about them. I haven't really had a close look at them yet. That'll be the next thing to do. Okay. That's quite nice and dark, so I put a bit of extra dark there. A bit there. Up at that tip again. I'm only going to do this this set of leaves just here with you, and then I'll do the rest by myself, because you'll just get a pretty good idea. And then we'll move on to the flowers. I think this is going to be a film of 2 parts, because otherwise it's going to drive you guys mad. So in this part I'll do the flowers, the cuckoo flower, and in the next part I'll deal with the butterflies, but I'll post them at the same time. So if you're only interested in the butterflies and you've got this far, you don't have to burst into tears and vow never to speak to me again. Okay, so just picking up those darks. I still haven't sorted that out, have I? A little bit where I haven't put the underside of the leaf in yet. So yes, this one is a private commission for a guy who's really into his botany and stuff, but he's just into nature as well. So he was talking, I mean, I'm not sure if it will turn into that, but he was talking about doing a series, commissioning a series of illustrations of butterflies and the food plant that the caterpillars eat, which interestingly is something that I've always wanted to do. I mean, I've never really had time. But if it's a paid job, then suddenly it all becomes a little bit more possible, right? So I'm just paying for it. So yeah, it's something that appeals to me as well. So I might, even if he ends up not pursuing the project, it's something I might see if I can carve some time out for between other jobs. Hollow laugh. Okay. Yeah, pressure's on, right? So it's July. I know in America, school holidays have already begun. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but in Britain, there we go, that's looking good. In Britain, they begin at the end of July. And so at the end of July, my working life becomes significantly curtailed until September. So the pressure is on to get everything done that has to be done before we finish for the summer. Drop shadow there, under the petals of the flowers. Drop shadow there. Okay, so you can see what I've been doing, literally picking out tiny bits with this darkest dark, and it crisps the whole thing up. If I zoom out, you can see, can't zoom out any more than that, but hopefully you can see that those leaves that we've just done look a lot crisper and sharper than the other ones. Right, I'll do all of that and then I'll come back to talk about the flowers. I've finished doing all the dark areas now on the whole plant. Lots of bits of shadow all over the shop, where the leaves cast shadows on the stem, on the leaves themselves. You can see all up. And then I worked into the calyx as well, because they're flushed purple, so the tips of each of them kind of purplish. And now it's time to work on the flowers. So what I've done is mixed up the right colour, which actually takes a bit of doing. Got more cuckoo flower reference out, more and more and more different photos and old illustrations, you know, all of that stuff. Just as many different sources of reference as you can get. It's kind of bluish pink generally, cuckoo flower. So I've kind of mixed this up. So this is a mixture of this, which is opera pink, with this blue, whose name again I still can't remember, but which is a really nice blue. It's not got too much green in it. And I've added, again, illegal, I've added a little bit of here you can see, of white gouache. So it makes it a little bit chalky. I know it does that, but it gets the right colour. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of work on a flower and a bud, and then we'll see how we get on. So the first thing I do is, with a very, very light touch, I'll put these veins in, and there again they just give a bit of structure. You need to not overdo it. You can't see a thing I'm doing actually, can you? Hold on. There we go. And outline the petals. Same time. There we go. You see, this is why I'm so fond of my Winsor & Newton brushes, because they have a really sharp tip and it holds. You know, you paint and it doesn't go blunt, doesn't change, it's reliable, I guess. It's a bit like if you drive a car and you're setting off on a journey, all you really want to know that the car's going to make it in one piece. Same with a paintbrush. You want that paintbrush to be doing the same job, whoops, at the end of the illustration as it is at the very outset. Okay, so I'm just delineating the outside of the petals. Okay. And in the middle of the flowers you've got the stamens, which are kind of lemony yellow green. There we go. Whoops, so that's done, and I will do the drooping flower head next to it. So I'm just mixing up more of that colour. Double checking my reference. I was going to do that one, but then I'd be leaning on that while it's drying, so that would be very stupid. Let's not do that one. Let's do this one for you instead. So again, the delineation, the outline of the petal. Very light touch. It's like with pencils or anything really. With a paintbrush, the harder you press, the thicker the line. And in this case, we do not want a thick line. I don't want these to be too pink either. I mean, when I say that, I don't mean that I don't want them to be too pink in colour. I just don't want too much colour on them, because from a distance they actually appear kind of almost white rather than pink. So there's not a great deal of pigmentation going on. Go, just following those veins around. And when you paint, you just redraw all the time, right? So if there's something where you've drawn, you think, oh, it doesn't look quite right, don't just stick to it slavishly. Have a little think, and if you think, yeah, okay, I can improve on that, then do, etc. etc. Right, so now you can see how I do those. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to pause, and then I'm not. I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to really water down that colour that I was talking about. You see, it's super watery. There we go. And just lay it on top, not over the whole thing. Oh, you see, it looked so watery, didn't it? But see how much bulk that colour actually had. So I put my brush in the water, and I'm diluting that even more. that's actually too dark, so I'm going to use a little squirtle of tissue paper to lift some of the bulk of that off. That's better. That's better. And then around the ears, this side. Okay, and that's gone on lighter, which is good. So again, dipping into the water and smoothing that in. Same on this side with a little bit more here because of course you've got the shadow being cast by the flower in front. Yarn this one at the end. It's almost too light, that one. Okay, and then the same again. Let's move this down to centre stage. It's funny when I do these films, a lot of the time when I paint I don't really think about it. It just sort of, I have a brush in my hand and time passes kind of thing. So it's very good for me having to analyse what it is that I'm doing in order to create whatever effect, for better or for worse, I'm playing around with. Okay, I'm now going to do the rest of the flowers and I'll come back to you. The pink is now on all the flowers. I need to work on the inside of the flower. So again, I'm just going to focus on one. You can't really see up this close, but there is quite a lot of pink on these flowers. So the inside, the corolla throat, is a kind of greenish yellow, but I really don't want to go too dark with it because it's all very, very delicate colouring. So I'm using quite a lot of yellow. Okay. A bit yellow, mixed in with a bit of green. Literally just a touch of green. Messy yellow. So applying that super carefully. Oh, I thought this one should feel a bit sick. Okay. Around the stamens. Literally, I'm just outlining them. And then the same again on this one. Literally, that's the background colour behind the stamens. Where else needs it? This one does. You can see it's so much what I do is literally just outlining, isn't it? Etc, etc. So I'll do that all over and then I'll make it slightly yellower and just put a really, really wet wash. You see how wet that is? I don't know if you can tell. Super wet, super duper wet. Okay, make sure that I do it. And again, so I'm going to go around and do this particular effect with all of the flowers. This green outlining with the yellow wash. And the base of the buds, it's also slightly flushed yellow. Again, you really don't want to overdo this stuff. Less is more. That's probably too vicious. So for the other buds, I'm going to dilute it down a bit. You can see that this one's a bit paler. The yellow that I'm using, it's still there, but it's not sort of violent yellow. Okay. Yeah. Funny, isn't it? Because you would have thought with a painting of flowers, there's the flowers that take forever and a day. Oh my gosh, I just made a massive mistake. Can you guys see? Right, perfect time to show you how to fix things when you screw it up. So first, blob like that. That really more or less gets rid of it. Now, this paint water is still really clean. So using clean water, scrub. May not work. Dab. Not great. I'm going to use this magic little thing. It's like a little foam. It's a foam cleaning. A little corner of foam. And you can get them. They're called something like paint magic erasers and stuff. They don't do anything nice to the paper at all, but sometimes they lift the pigment. So again, scrub, scrub, scrub. Is it going to take that yellow out, which is stained? Ta-da! It's not all gone, but you'd have to look close to see it. Never panic when you mess things up. You can normally fix it again. Okay, what were we doing? We're playing around with yellows and buds, weren't we? Okay. It does seem to be, weirdly, only sort of the buds, not the grown flowers, that have this yellow flushing. You know what, though? I would give a lot at this point in time to have a cuckoo flower in bloom so I could actually see what it's flipping doing, because I'm not at all sure. I wouldn't say I'm making it up entirely, but I'm relying on my memory. I don't much like relying on my memory, because what if I've misremembered all the colours? It's perfectly possible. Half the time I say, I misremember my own memories, and I think that I've done something, and then my sister turns around and says, no, that wasn't you, that was me. So if I can't even remember things, how am I going to remember colours? It looks more or less right. It looks a bit like common century though, which is not right. I think it's right. I think it's more or less right. It feels okay to me. Okay. And now in for the stamens. So the stamens themselves are sort of pale yellowish colour. So I'm using, so that's Naples yellow there, which obviously is much too red. It's much too pinky. And then I'm going to use some of this Windsor yellow. Now that's too dark, but if I use that to outline with, it will be about right. So again, where can we, oh, why have we gone out of focus? That's no use. So there we are. So literally outlining those stamens in yellow, or the anthers. The stamens I'll outline probably in a pale blue. Light colour, light touch. Less is more at this point in time. Also, we've got to a point, it's now 5 o'clock. Well, it's actually later than 5. I need to make tea for the family and do stuff to do tomorrow, which is Saturday, and suddenly I'm running out of time. I guess you guys have that as well. I have the luxury of sitting in my studio day in, day out and getting on with painting, but if you do it in between other things, you must always have that pressure, I guess, hanging over you. Oh, I really ought to be doing something else. Okay. This one drooping down. Where have you gone, droopy droopy? Oh, that one's up there. Okay. This one. Yeah. Okay. You can see what we're doing, literally. It's what we've been doing all along, right? Outlining. And then you have a second pass where you fill in a little bit. Then we've got the double-sided aspect of the anther there. See the shape of it properly. So yeah, these are produced by the flower as a way of spreading the pollen to pollinators. And in general, if you have, yeah, I'm going to zoom out again. If you have a pretty flower with nice colours and all that kind of stuff, then you will find that it's pollinated by insects or birds or mammals sometimes. Whereas if you have a less colourful one, like the grasses for example, or maybe hazel catkins, those tend not to be pollinated by animals but by the wind. So if you see a flouncy, pretty flower, it's probably those petals are there not to make us ooh and ah with amazement and joy, but to attract pollinators in. And if you're a grass or a hazel or whatever, that would be a lot of wasted energy, so you don't bother. Rely on the wind. Okay, so now we've got the pistil, which is the female part. So this is the top of it, and this is where the pollen in theory lands and then burrows down, the pollen grain burrows down, will fertilise the ovary, and you'll get a lovely little Ladies-smock seed growing. Ready for next year. Look, I've flipping done it again. Ah, Lizzie. Because I'm rushing. Ah, that's all right. That one lifted better. Okay. I'm just going to do a couple of little tweaks, and then we're going to rub out some pencil lines, and then we'll do the last touches on the flowers. Right, so what have I done? I've put a little bit more detail and I've rubbed out the pencil marks, so it's quite a lot more delicate. We're really closing in now. I'm going to mix up some cobalt blue with a little bit of purple. Make a very kind of gentle, very, very watery bluish colour. And that's going to do the cast shadows. So we really don't want to go too dark, but we do want to make it look like there's some lighting going on here. There we go. Oh, it's all out of focus again. I wish you would stop doing that. Does it when I'm not looking as well. I do apologise. At least hopefully this time I haven't been filming my hair non-stop for 2 hours. Seriously, Lizzie. Okay, so just plotting in these shadows. Ooh, that's possibly a bit too intense. Yeah, maybe it's not. I think I'm going to let that stand and see. It gives it form, you see. And once you've rubbed away the pencil lines, so much more delicacy to the flowers. They're much lighter. But if you had a pencil, if you had a paper which didn't allow you to rub away the pencil lines, that'd be disastrous, I'm sure, because they'd stay looking heavy. Can you see they're kind of like drop shadows here? Just hopefully, at least, giving some semblance of depth to the flowers. And of course we haven't done anything with the butterflies yet. And I've just got the go ahead on a job, so now I'm not going to be able to do anything with the butterflies for flipping ages, but that's okay because I needed to get the go ahead on the job. Sorry, thinking loud. Okay. Don't really want too much there. You still see here? Yeah. Okay, so on this side. And here, let's really be quite. Oh, that's nice. Look at that blue against that white. Ah, but it's not quite crisp enough. That's better. Crisp it up. Crisp it up. Okay. I'm not going to do too much on the buds. I know I'm going off screen now, but only for a second. Okay. What else? Where else? Where else? Where else? That's all right. That one's okay down there. That one I'll knock back a bit because I don't know what it thinks it's doing. And misbehaving. Okay. A little bit, and you're behind the one that's behind, and that's just got left out. But yeah, when you've done your pencil, sometimes you find little bits that somehow have got away that haven't been rubbed out, so be careful with those. You idiot, absolute prannock. So I was about to say, so we're nearly done. So I've just messed it up. Not badly though, it's fine. I'm not frightened. Remember, never be upset by a mistake, just fix it. Whew. I'm not really keen to do too much up here because they've already got quite a lot of colour to them. Ah, there you go, notification. Must be Friday night. Okay. Okay, and then the last thing to do is, in the heart of those, pick out any real kind of humdinger darks, which there will be very, very few of, and this is really a bit dangerous actually, because you can really compromise it if you put too much dark in. It can look a bit rubbish, so I'm going to be a bit careful, and I'm going to keep it light. So where do we need those? Tiny bit there, tiny bit there. And this is as much to do with the shape of the flowers as it is with the shadow. It's a way of crisping them up. Can you still see? Yes, you can just. Tiny little bits of tonality going on here. Really is very last bits and pieces. And in here as well. Sorry, that's in where the 4 petals have overlapped. Careful. I think that's all right. Right, if we zoom out. I said if we zoom out. There we are. So yeah, that's probably kind of it. A little bit more colour on this. That pistil needs a bit of colour. That needs a bit of colour. These really are the tweaky final bits. And just like all of us, I need to know when to walk away, when to say enough is enough. And I think we're pretty much there. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's okay. I'm going to see if I can raise up the camera a bit. Yeah, so there we are. So that's the botanical illustration bit done. And it was quite a lesson in how you can draw a flower when you haven't got it in front of you. Seriously, man, if you can get your hands on a specimen, it makes life massively easier. So anyway, I will join you again for another film when I will be painting the butterflies to go along with the flower, and then the piece will be done. If I just zoom in again, you can see. So there are all the leaves that we've worked on, and all the way up the flower, up to the buds. So yeah, I'm going to put a piece of paper on top of that now to keep it safe until I get onto the butterflies. And yeah, thank you very much for spending time with me. Do watch the following one where I'll do the butterflies. And until then, feel free to have a look at my illustrations, finished illustrations online, lizzieharper.co.uk, and click on galleries. And thank you so much for spending time watching me draw the cuckoo flower. Just one last thing to finish, which is, what did Shakespeare have to say about the cuckoo flower? Hey, what did he have to say? Well, he said, "When daisies pied and violets blew, and ladies-smock, that's this, and ladies-smock all silver white, and cuckoo buds of yellow hue, do paint the meadow with delight." There you go. So it figures in Love's Labour's Lost, and if it's good enough for Shakespeare, then this very pretty little flower is good enough for me.